Hello and welcome to Task 44. We're going to learn about adjusting constraints today. Just to recap, in Task 43, we ended up looking like this. We had a sketch that is asymmetrical. We have a few constraints added, like I believe these lines are parallel. We have a vertical line here, a horizontal line here. We had a 90-degree perpendicular constraint between these two lines. So we have some constraints, but we're about to adjust even more as we get into Task 44. We're going to open our 43 and we're going to rename it to 44 to create a new file from Task 43. And when we're done with our work, we're going to make sure that we take a screenshot that has our name visible and has all of the constraints visible. So just a reminder, that's what we're going for. So let's get into Task 44. We're going to make out of these constraints, and it's going to be pretty quick, I think. So I'm going to set up the instructions on one side so we can see them, and I'm going to have our task over here. So I have already opened my Task 43. I'm going to rename the document, which you can do too, to Task 44 with my name, of course. And I don't know if you haven't already, you can double click on sketch 1 and that takes you to the sketch we made. We're going to show constraints so that we can see the constraints as we're making them. And when you submit your file, you of course want the constraints to be showing. Okay, so first we're going to ensure that lines 2 and 10 should always remain parallel. So line 2 is here. Line 10 is here. They are definitely not parallel right now. How do we make them parallel? Well, there are actually two ways. We can, if we don't have any tools selected while we're in sketch 1, we could click on the lines. Notice my mouse, when I clicked on this line, I have a little number 1 here right next to my mouse pointer. And if I clicked on a second line, now I have a number 2 on my mouse pointer. That shows that 2 features are selected. You can do many things when you have multiple features selected, including using constraints. So we could take those 2 features, and we're supposed to be making them parallel. We'll choose the parallel constraint here. And notice now we do have 2 parallel lines. I think, do you want to see the other way to do it? If you want to select the parallel tool first, and then click on one line and then the other, you would get the same result. So 2 ways to do it. You could also experiment with what happens when you click on the right line first and then the left line. It might be something interesting to investigate. So we have made these lines parallel. I kind of want to readjust it so that this is still, we still have this line kind of coming to the left. So I'm just pulling that side out a little bit. The next step over here says line 6 should always remain parallel with the x-axis despite revision in the orientation of any other edge or line. So line 6 should remain parallel with the x-axis. I can think of 2 ways of doing that, right? You could use the parallel constraint and set line 6 to be parallel to the x-axis over here. Or if you made it horizontal, isn't that the definition of horizontal? That something is parallel to the x-axis. So 2 ways of doing it. I'm going to try the parallel function. Let's see how this goes. So we have selected the parallel tool or constraint. We're going to click on line 6, and I'm clicking on the x-axis. So we have a parallel constraint. Now you can see this constraint is blue. It has just been added. So that worked. And of course, the other way that we suggested was using the horizontal constraint. So you can give those a try. You can decide what you think is best. Lines 5 and 7 should always be the same length. So just to kind of play with this a little bit, right now they're definitely not the same length, right? We could kind of try to make them the same length, but they're definitely not the same length right now. If we move points around, they can both be pretty much any length. We want to make it so that they are always going to be the same length. What constraint do you think we could use? You want to take a minute to think about it? If you were thinking equal, you are right. We're going to use the equal constraint. We're going to click on the first line and the second line. And now they are equal, aren't they? That looks pretty cool. All right, I'm going to press escape to get out of the constraint. And we're on the last requirement here. The design would require that line 3 and 9 align horizontally so that they move up and down together. So in order to get things to align horizontally, we are going to use, surprise, surprise, the horizontal constraint. Before I do that, I just wanted to kind of show you how they are right now. These lines, line 3 and 9, both have a horizontal constraint on them, as you can see, right? So no matter how I move the points or the lines, they are always going to be horizontal. And they're actually always parallel to each other. That's a constraint we set up in task 43. But now we want them to be horizontally aligned. That means they're always going to be basically on the same horizontal line plane. They're both going to be the same distance from the x-axis. It's almost like if you could connect them with a line, it would look like they were part of one long line. So right now that's not the case, right? One of them can be low, one of them can be high. We want to fix it so that they're always going to be at like about the same height off the x-axis, if you will. Kind of like that. So let's give it a try. We are going to do something a little bit different here. We're going to select not lines, but points. So let's start by selecting the endpoints of line 3. Here's 1 and 2. Notice I have a number 2 is showing next to my mouse pointer again. I'm going to click on another point. Now I have a number 3 showing next to my mouse pointer. I clicked on a 4th point. I have a number 4 showing. So now I have these 4 points selected. I can look at my constraints, and I'm going to choose the horizontal constraint to make these points horizontally aligned. There we go, and there we go. It looks like these are at the same distance from the x-axis. That's awesome. And I'm not in the constraint. I'm going to try moving them. That's it. They move together, don't they? This is just what we wanted. Perfect. All right. So believe it or not, that's it for task 44. It should look a little bit like this, which ours kind of does. And we are going to make sure that we take a screenshot with the constraints showing and with your name in the upper right hand corner to show that this is your account. It's kind of like putting your name on a piece of paper. All right, so go ahead and submit your screenshot in Schoology, and good luck with the project.